Hello there, and welcome to another Friday edition of Grover Reads the News. May the birds traveling through on their return north for the warm season bring with them, to you, a moment of possibility, a reminder of cycles, the rite of return, how migration is beautiful, even as it's difficult. Today is Friday, February 28th. My name is Grover, and this is Grover Reads the News. I have a news update for you. Would you like to hear it? If so, keep listening. If not, I'll offer again soon. Also, a note to say that this offering is available in digest form on Substack at groverreadsthenews.substack.com, which gives informed choice about which sections you'd like to listen to and which ones you may not be able to hear right now. This is also available in full format wherever you listen to podcasts. Thanks for those of you who've given the show 5 stars and even 1 review. Any bump to reach more people out there is appreciated. And with that, let's hear some news. First, we have U.S. news from Iowa about gender minority and trans rights. Hundreds of protesters flooded the capital of Iowa yesterday to try and stop the legislature from removing gender identity protections from the state's civil rights code, which is intended to protect people from being denied access to what we need to live, like housing, jobs, public space, or medical care. 167 people signed up to give public testimony during the only 90 minutes of a hearing, and only 24 speakers were supportive of the bill. The rest were speaking up for the rights of trans people. Iowa State Representative Amy Wickendall was the last Democrat to speak out Thursday against the bill removing these protections, becoming emotional as she offered her personal story as a trans woman, saying, "I transitioned to save my life. The purpose of this bill and the purpose of every anti-trans bill is to further erase us from public life and to stigmatize our existence," Wickendall said. The sum total of every anti-trans and anti-LGBT bill is to make our existence illegal. CBS News reports. The legislature passed the bill anyway, and it's headed to the far-right MAGA governor for signing. Over the last 3 years, Iowa has been the originary state for MAGA laws at the state level, such as book bans, bans on teaching about or trying to fix racism and other inequalities at public institutions, and anti-abortion bans, which means this is a pattern we should prepare for as copycat attempts to restrict civil rights protections for trans people in other states is likely to spread. Next, we have U.S. news about the federal executive branch. On Wednesday, fired federal workers and HIV/AIDS activists staged a die-in inside the Capitol office building wearing T-shirts with bloody handprints and the words, "Aid funding cuts kill," and PEPFAR saves lives. Tens of thousands of people have been denied life-saving HIV and AIDS medication by the refusal of the federal administration to distribute PEPFAR money to communities, including many children and families and individuals in Africa. News reporting and analysis from the Washington Post and Slate describe how Musk's unaccountable Doge Bros, 21 and 23-year-olds who publicly support white supremacist and Nazi ideologies, are defying the direction of the new Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, and the apparent sign-off of the White House to distribute funding for critically needed medical care through the PEPFAR program funds. The Post's Matt Bai describes how this is happening, and I'm just going to full-on read the block quote here because I think he describes it quite well. Quote, "But each time, using their new gatekeeping powers and clearly acting on orders from Musk or one of his lieutenants, Farder and Klinger would veto the payments, a process that required them to manually check boxes in the payment system one at a time, the same tedious way you probably pay your bills online. Meanwhile, AIDS clinics shuttered and staff found themselves stranded in unstable countries such as Congo. A pregnant woman in an undisclosed country has sued the Trump administration because she was denied a medevac helicopter. In another case, I was told an employee in southern Africa who needed chemotherapy was also denied a chopper because no one would authorize the money. He goes on to write, finally, on the second Saturday in February, 2 IT guys from Doge shut everyone else out of the payment system entirely. They became the only people who could even see the payments waiting to be approved. Hardly any of the essential funding promised by Rubio has been processed as of last week, unquote. 2 weeks ago, a judge ordered the administration release USAID funding, and the administration did not obey the order. The judge then required them to release the funds by midnight this Wednesday, but the Supreme Court stepped in and put the judge's order on hold. I will provide an update on the court's ruling when it's released. If you're interested in hearing a deeper analysis about the link between the tech oligarchy, what's sometimes referred to as the PayPal mafia, white billionaires and political insiders from apartheid South Africa that have embedded themselves within Donald Trump's orbit, a group that includes Elon Musk and Peter Thiel, I've included a link in the source notes for the show. Trump offered refugee status to white Afrikaners while removing refugee status to those already given refugee status in the U.S., including Afghanis who worked with the U.S. military. This stark contrast is quite worrisome, and the podcast that I linked provides deeper perspective on the norms of Musk and those surrounding Trump that may help us understand this moment and what else we might see to come. Next, we have an update on the executive branch about the Housing and Urban Development Department. Elon Musk's Doge has given access to personal and financial information within the Department of Housing and Urban Development, or HUD, to people who run an AI real estate firm and a mobile home industry that has consolidated land ownership and pushed tens of thousands of mobile home owners out of their homes over the last 10 years. The administration announced plans to cut half the workforce of housing and urban development, including those who investigate housing discrimination and those who manage rental voucher programs that help make up the difference between what a family can afford for a rent and the cost of an apartment. This news was announced at the same time that I read about the deaths of Darnell Curry and Amila Curry, 2 children who froze to death in a Detroit parking garage last week when the van they were sleeping in stopped running and pushing warm air through the car. Their mom had reached out to the city's housing navigation team for help, but did not receive it. I've thought about these children every day since I've heard. These cuts will push more people into homelessness and worsen the housing crisis, putting more kids like Darnell and Amila at risk. There are many ways to take actions to keep families housed and support unhoused kids. Local and regional support through mutual aid or homeless service programs are available wherever you live and provide life-saving care to people. I'm putting the link also to 5 calls in the source links at the bottom of this email if you'd like to call your representative about this or any other topic we've covered today. Next, we have international news about infectious diseases. An unknown infectious disease has killed 60 people in the Congo, and almost 1,000 people are known to be infected. Symptoms include typical flu symptoms as well as bleeding in many cases. The time gap between the onset of symptoms and death has been just 48 hours in the majority of cases. Infection disease concerns grow in the United States as 150 people in West Texas have contracted the measles, a disease previously eradicated in the U.S., and 1 unvaccinated child has died. The first human cases of bird flu in the U.S. have been announced after hundreds of thousands of domestic birds have been killed to prevent the spread of avian flu, which has driven egg prices sky high. The newly appointed head of the Department of Health is a vaccine denier who fired hundreds of critical researchers and response employees within the Center for Disease Control. Finally, we have nature news about biofluorescence and birds. Reporting from Mindy Weisenberger at CNN shares that some species of birds of paradise, the bird, not the very cool plant that looks like a bird that's all over the Bay Area of California, but the animals that live in Papua New Guinea and Australia, they emit secret color signals that humans can't see with our bare eyes. Some species of birds of paradise, which have colorful, elaborate feathers, likely use biofluorescence to enhance visual cues during courtship displays and territorial disputes, according to the new study. Weisenberger says living organisms produce light in two ways: bioluminescence and biofluorescence. Bioluminescence, such as the light produced by fireflies, requires a chemical reaction involving the molecules luforcin and leucophars. Biofluorescent creatures generate their glow with structures that absorb light energy wavelengths, such as UV, violet, or blue light, then emit the light in lower energy wavelengths. Wow, everyone. Just wow. After researchers identified bioluminescence in fish, they asked if other species might be emitting the light that we can't see as well. Researchers took blue lights and UV goggles into dark rooms to look at the birds held at the Museum of Natural History and found birds of paradise with bright black feathers interspersed especially emit this biofluorescence. Quote, whether it's in birds of paradise that might be using it for signaling or it's another organism that's using it for camouflage, it's just an additional thing that organisms are evolving in order to survive and reproduce. Well, everyone, thanks for joining me to hear the news today. The news is intense today, and we are a part of a physical world filled with other humans. I am taking care of myself this weekend by lifting some moderately heavy weights, dealing with paperwork that might stabilize my life now or in the future, taking my kids to a pizza and game night, hearing some good live music, and hopefully putzing around the house with my dog. I hope you and yours have some good connection, some rest, and maybe a plan for some good trouble this weekend, as John Lewis would say. I'll be back with you next week. Until then, be well.